Q and Review, celebrating 40 years of audio production, welcomes you to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports podcast, recorded from our studio in the Bishopbriggs Media Centre and by our volunteers working from home. Keep up to date with Q and Review news via our Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, or Instagram at Q and Review. That's @CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch with us directly by emailing information@qandreview.com. That's INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling us on 0141 772 3979. Please like and share our podcast and give us constructive feedback.
Evening Times Sport, February 11. Celtic post £44 million profit. Report by Lana Mackay. Celtic have released their financial interim report for the first half of the season, showing a profit of £44 million despite a slight drop in revenue. The club's chairman Peter Lowell issued a statement explaining the numbers for the 6 months up to December 31, 2024, as published on their website, citing transfers, player wages, and investment on infrastructure as some of the reasons behind the dip in profits. According to the report, Celtic's total revenue stood at £83.5 million, 2.1% down on last year's total of £85.2 million. The club's profit before tax was £43.9 million. The former chief executive addressed the reduction in profits for this period in the report. Lowell said, "The key drivers of this were the significant transfer spend incurred in the period, where we exceeded our record transfer spend twice, and the investment into the first-team playing squad wage costs, and our continued investment into infrastructure, including our Barrowfield development, Lennoxtown and Celtic Park." In the report, Lowell also confirmed the imminent return of left-back Kieran Tierney. When addressing player registrations such as Jota's return to the club and Kasper Michael's contract extension, Lowell said that Celtic entered into a pre-contract agreement that will see Tierney return to Celtic in July 2025. Celtic chairman expressed disappointment about the club's lack of January transfer activity, aside from Jota and Jeffrey Schlupp, although he praised the business done in last year's window, and said, "We invested significantly in the summer transfer window, and while we aim to do more in the recent window, we go into the remainder of the season from a strong position and with confidence. I wish to extend our gratitude and appreciation to our supporters for the backing of our club on behalf of the board. Thanks also must go to our employees, shareholders, and commercial partners for their continued support." Report by Lana Mackay. Evening Times Sport, February 11. Michael Stewart attacks Clermont over deplorable starlet treatment. Report by Lana Mackay. Michael Stewart has blasted Philippe Clermont's decision to substitute Bailey Rice during Rangers' humiliating Scottish Cup defeat to Queen's Park on Sunday. The 18-year-old was taken off at half-time after being handed his first start for the club, and Stewart reckons it was a deplorable decision from the manager, while branding the later substitution of Yanis Hagi for Ridvan Yilmaz as mental. Speaking on the Scottish Football Social Club, the pundit said, "This is where I have a real gripe with managers, and in particular with what Philip Clement has done. Bailey Rice did not deserve to get taken off at half-time. I thought that was a deplorable decision because the team was lacking urgency. Bailey Rice, a youngster, first start at Ibrox, doing absolutely fine. The more experienced players in and around him are the ones you're looking for that urgency and intensity from. Bailey Rice has great technique and ability. He will be brought along with those more experienced players. If you're looking to make a substitute, you do not substitute the youngster because you are damaging him psychologically. Even more so now that the result has gone the way it has gone. He will be feeling he was the problem, and he absolutely was not the problem. Then to take Yanis Hagi off and putting a left back on, mental. Meanwhile, Rangers face jaw-dropping figures after that loss to Queen's Park. Financially, this is hurting them. New figures curated by Kieran Maguire, who runs the Price of Football podcast, have outlined the sheer disparity in financial power between Rangers and Queen's Park, who knocked them out of the cup. Queen's Park have not spent a penny on player purchases, with the total squad's cost sitting at zero for the Glasgow club. Meanwhile, Rangers have invested £21 million in player trading in 2024, with the £48.99 million total squad cost dwarfing that of the Championship side. It is a similar story when it comes to wages, with Rangers paying more than 20 times the amount of Queen's Park to staff. The Championship club spend £2.75 million on wages, with Rangers total at £61.19 million. Queen's Park will have earned a tidy bonus for their progression in the Scottish Cup this season and a share of ticket sales for the match at Ibrox, but their revenue total is a mere fraction of that of Rangers. The Ibrox club posted a revenue of £88.31 million, which is compared to the £3.86 million from Queen's Park. Evening Times Sport, February 11. Rugby. Townsend calls for perspective after Scotland's Six Nations loss. Report by Martin Macmillan. Gregor Townsend called for a sense of perspective to be applied in the wake of Scotland's chastening 32-18 defeat by Ireland, as he pointed out that it would have been a massive shock if his side had turned over the defending Six Nations champions at Murrayfield on Sunday. After an encouraging autumn campaign, the Scots came into the championship with high hopes of finishing in the top two for the first time this century. But Sunday's demoralising defeat at the hands of an Irish side chasing a third consecutive title brought a familiar sense of deflation for Townsend and his players after they had spoken extensively in recent months about the progress they felt they had made since their 36-14 World Cup pool stage defeat by the same opponents in Paris in October 2023. "No, I don't," said the head coach, when asked if he felt an 11th consecutive defeat by Ireland had left Scotland back at square one in their quest to become genuine title contenders. The scoreline was big, and I know that the journalist's job is to talk about this game, but we have to look a bit longer term and where we have been. After that game against Ireland in the World Cup, we changed a lot, who we selected, who we are as a team, and that was done with the players as well. Our next game, we played a different type of rugby against Wales. We have carried on that, we've added bits to it, and we have been really competitive since then. This was probably our most disappointing performance. Defeat, let's say, since Ireland, but it happens every now and again. If it was to happen in the next 2 or 3 games, I would be much more concerned. It is a one-off game, and you have got to have context. We are playing a tournament where you've got to play 5 games, and if you start to over-analyse what went on in the one game, you lose sight of what you've been building towards. I said before the game that the defeats we have had against Ireland have shaped who we are as well. It's changed a little bit how we played, and that's been transferred to other performances. It did not transfer well enough this time, but you have got to take the learnings out of your game. No one's more disappointed than me that we were not able to go 2 from 2 and we were not able to beat Ireland. But they deserved to win, and we have got to make sure that this game and all the last 4 or 5 that we have played are part of who we are next time we play. Townsend admitted it's going to be difficult for Scotland, who have trips to England and France either side of a home game against Wales, to get back into title contention after Sunday's defeat. And he continued, "We have lost to the number 2 team in the world, who are going for the 3rd title. If you take it like that, you go, well, it could have been a shock if we had won. I think it would have been a massive shock. They were clear favourites, but we believed we could win, and we worked hard towards a win. Playing our next opponent, England, was always going to be difficult regardless of the Ireland result. We do not have a brilliant record down there. It's a very tough place to play. But we do have a very good record recently. They have just come off the back of winning a great game against France. We know how difficult each game in the Six Nations is. We have got to obviously play much better next time to have a chance of bouncing back with a victory." Townsend indicated that Bath centre Cam Redpath and Edinburgh back rower Ben Muncaster could come into contention after missing the start of the championship through injury. But Glasgow backs Kyle Steyn and Adam Hastings will remain sidelined. Key pair Finn Russell and Darcy Graham will continue to be assessed after the head injuries they sustained against Ireland, with the latter released from hospital on Sunday evening. Report by Martin Macmillan. Evening Times Sport, February 12. Noor says something special about match against Schmeichel. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Bayern Munich icon Manuel Neuer has won numerous major trophies in his career, including the FIFA World Cup, 11 Bundesliga titles, 2 UEFA Champions League trophies, and 5 DFB Pokals, cementing his legacy as one of football's greatest goalkeepers. However, Nour is preparing to visit Parkhead for the first time in his illustrious 21 career as Bayern meets Celtic in the Champions League tonight. And the 38-year-old has expressed excitement about facing Kasper Schmeichel, the son of Manchester United legend Peter, especially since the Celtic goalkeeper is also nearing the end of his career at the highest level. The German international described it as an honour to play against the Danish shot-stopper, who will be lining up for Celtic in this highly anticipated Champions League knockout stage first leg fixture. Nour admitted, "It is an honour to play against him. In our careers we kept meeting, we kept talking. I met his dad around the Champions League matches, and I always talked to him as a goalkeeper. It's always something special to meet someone my age who is still playing." Nour then went on to highlight the threat of Celtic winger Nicholas Kuhn, who has 17 goals and 12 assists from 34 appearances this season, and said, "We know the player who played in Bayern's second team. He is fast. We know of their offence, and we have to think of the ones who are fast, who can shoot, but we have worked on that. Our ambition is always to play the final, no matter where it takes place. It is always something special. But of course it is special for us that it takes place in Munich again. Everyone is excited about that game. The fans, the staff. But it is about daily work we have to make. We have 2 games against Celtic and 180 minutes. We have to be the better team to get where we want. We have to take it one step at a time." Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, February 12. Celtic manager praises Harry Kane. Report by Graham McGarry. Harry Kane has been performing at a world-class level for so long that it can sometimes be easy to forget his rather humble origin story and his early struggles in the professional game. The England captain will walk out at Celtic Park this evening as indisputably one of the best strikers on the planet, a status he has enjoyed for the best part of a decade or more now. Among an embarrassment of attacking riches at Bayern, Munich coach Vincent Kompany's disposal, it is Kane who will be worrying the Celtic supporters of their manager more than any other. Brendan Rodgers, like just about anyone else with a mild interest in the sport, has long been an admirer of Kane's abilities. But it isn't just the obvious elite-level footballing ability that Kane possesses that has so struck Rodgers, but the mental strength, determination and resilience of the man to overcome those early career setbacks and make the most of himself that marks him out above so many others. Rodgers says in fact that Kane would have been considered a silver medalist when he was coming through the ranks, the sort of player who was not necessarily tipped for the top and had to fight and scrap their way there. And if there are any Celtic fans who feel that Kane's level may have dipped from the summit he reached as he has edged into his 30s, they may be in for a rude awakening this evening. Said Rodgers, "Oh, he's absolutely brilliant. Obviously I've known Harry for a long time and come across him many times. Harry's actually one of those ones that until you're stood on the side of the pitch and you face him, you actually only then really see his level. I know as a young player, he came through the system at Tottenham. It wasn't easy for him at the beginning. He had lots of loans getting out to clubs and didn't quite work out. And then he was given the opportunity by Tim Sherwood at Tottenham. Tim had belief in him and had worked with him as a young player. Once he got into the team, his development just improved from that, and you look at him now, he's a world-class player. But he's changed his game a wee bit as well in the last number of years, where he's on the move more, dropping short. You see his passing, you see his abilities, but he's also tough. He's a tough boy as well, is Harry. I cannot speak highly enough of him. I think he was absolutely brilliant at Tottenham, showed the same for England, and he's gone out to Bayern, and you just need to look at his goals record. A fantastic player and a good guy. We know that. Harry would tell you himself he wasn't what I would say the gold medalist, and that's normally the players that come through anyway. Those silver medalist players, the guys that are having to strive and fight for their careers. And that was Harry. He would tell you himself. But then he found someone who really appreciated him and backed him in Tim. Tim was working in the youths at that time, and when Harry had the chance to go out on loan again, he didn't want to go. Tim put him in the team, and from that he's never really looked back. And then it's all about your attitude, your professionalism, your desire to be the best player you can be. And you see all of that. You see how he's developed, how he's matured, his training, everything. I have obviously spoken to boys that work with him with England as well, and they speak so highly of him. So a world-class player, and he's doing a brilliant job for his team now. That is not to say that Rodgers has been overemphasising the need for his players to focus their energies on stopping Kane in the build-up to this match, recognising that to become preoccupied with the opposition threat risks dulling their own. Besides, with Jamal Musiala, Kingsley Coman and Michael Olise likely to be tucked in behind the striker, to home in on Kane may be a losing strategy in a Champions League equivalent of a game of whack-a-mole. Instead, Rodgers will, of course, look to limit the space available for the Bayern attackers to operate in as far as is possible. But his philosophy is that attack may be the best form of defence. He said, I always think with top players it's difficult. You look tactically to find ways, and that's the beauty of the game. You are trying to nullify their strengths. But I sometimes think with the very best players, you want to deny them space, but they will always find space. That's my experience of working at a level where world-class players will find the space. I think Harry's one of those. But of course, we have to nullify that threat. They have other quality players too, and then obviously we have to bring our game as well, which I've been really pleased with at this level. We've shown that we can hurt teams at this level. We are very excited by it. It's a great challenge and a great test for us against a top side. Bayern Munich are the giants of the European game. They really are football royalty in terms of what they have achieved over many, many years at this level. So for us to be in a position where we can challenge them, it is a great marker for us. I know with our game that we can mix up the basics, all our running power and physicality, which is something that we've really improved on at this level. When I go back to 2023 and 2024, that's been a big part of our learning, bringing the physicality to the game and improving in that aspect. I think if we can do that with the energy and the support behind us, then anything is possible in the game. Report by Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, February 12. Lennon Miller returns to Motherwell training. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Motherwell have been handed a major boost, with Lennon Miller back in full training ahead of Saturday's Scottish Premiership clash with Ross County. The 18-year-old midfielder has been sidelined since December 29 due to an ankle fracture, but is now available for selection. His return comes after he was linked with a move away throughout the recent winter transfer window, with champions Celtic among his admirers. Motherwell, who remain without a permanent manager following Stuart Kettlewell's shock resignation, also knocked back a deadline day bid from Belgian side Union St Gilloise for the Scotland under-21 star, who spent a significant period of his injury rehabilitation wearing a moon boot. Jair Tavares has also returned to full training, while Apostolos continues his recovery from a calf injury. The treatment table has been piling up at Motherwell, but Jack Vale has been allowed to rejoin parent club Blackburn Rovers to undergo surgery on an Achilles issue that will sideline him for a significant period. Goalkeeper Archie Mayer has also gone under the knife after suffering a fractured hand, and the club say that defender Marvin Kalita is being monitored after sustaining a knee injury in a league defeat to Celtic earlier this month. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, February 12. Rodgers thanks Celtic for very supportive financial backing. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Celtic are sitting pretty at the top of Scottish football, boasting an impressive 13-point lead in the Premiership. With the team performing excellently on the pitch, they have also been making waves off it by further strengthening their financial standing. So, as Celtic prepare for their crucial UEFA Champions League playoff first leg clash against Bayern Munich this evening, their domestic dominance is well known to their German opponents. Brendan Rodgers' side has been a force in Scotland this season, already lifting the Premier Sports Cup before Christmas, and continue to showcase their squad depth and skill across all competitions. But it's not just the success on the field that has caught the eye. The club's financial health is equally impressive. In their latest interim financial results, released on Monday, Celtic revealed a remarkable £44 million profit and a robust £65 million sitting in the bank. The Glasgow Giants' commercial growth, strategic investments and player development, including the sale of Matt O'Reilly to Brighton, have contributed to this financial boom, positioning Celtic as a club capable of continuing to compete at the highest levels of European football. Reacting to the groundbreaking news, the Celtic manager expressed that the club's hierarchy has provided him with ample support since he returned for his second tenure in the summer of 2023. This suggestion comes despite Celtic failing to land a replacement for Kyogo Furuhashi during the recent transfer window after selling the prolific striker to Rennes. Rodgers stated, "The club have been very, very supportive of myself coming back. You see some of the signings we made in the summer, so they have been brilliant in that aspect. We, as a club, we want to go forward. We all have ambitions to keep proving ourselves at this level, and for that you need to build and build and build. But you also had to have half a mind on making sure that you are a sustainable club. So I think from the accounts aspect it is very healthy. Of course, as a manager, you want to put those funds, well, some of those funds, into the team, And you have seen that the club have done that, and hopefully we can do that going forward. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, February 12. The key term in Maida report that saw Celtic win appeal. Report by Graham McGarry. Brendan Rodgers was delighted to receive the news that Dayton Maida will be able to face Bayern Munich in the Champions League, but the Celtic manager joked he now regrets running the legs off the winger over the past week, having expected UEFA to kick out the club's appeal against his suspension. Maida was handed a 2-match ban after picking up a red card late on in the win over Young Boys, and sat out the defeat to Aston Villa, but the description of his challenge as an assault in the official's match report led Celtic to challenge the length of his suspension. They received the news that their appeal had been successful. That news came through on Monday evening and was much to Rodgers' surprise. But he believes that Maida is the one player in his squad who would be able to handle the hefty workload he has saddled him with, having played 90 minutes against Motherwell, Dundee and Raith Rovers. Rodgers laughed. I know, I ran the legs off him for 3 games. It was brilliant by the club, I've got to say, because he was always going to serve 1 game. But until you get the written report, which didn't come through until Thursday or Friday last week, you cannot put in your appeal. But as soon as it did come in, obviously the club put in the appeal, which, with the greatest respect to UEFA, we were thinking this probably would not bear fruit. And then when I got the call to say he was able to play, I thought, goodness me, he's played the 3 full games. He couldn't run any more as a striker, as a winger, but thankfully he's just a bundle of energy, so he'll be okay. I was a wee bit surprised when it came through, but it was not unsurprising because of getting 2 games. What was that word? Assault. Aye, assault was what was causing it. It wasn't an assault, that was in the report. It's such a great bit of news. He's an extraordinary player. I think how he's been this year for us, not just in goals, but what his value gives to the team in terms of his pressing and his honesty to the game. So to have that mentality and that ability available was a big surprise for us, but it's a nice surprise. Report by Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, February 6. Transformational Rangers deal catapulted Castor to $1 billion company. Report by David Irvin. Castor founder Tom Behan has revealed the partnership with Rangers was transformational and helped build the brand into a $1 billion sportswear empire. The Liverpool company have produced Rangers kits from back in 2020. Castor also assists in retail operations at the club. Castor work with huge clubs and athletes around the world, with Andy Murray having been kitted out by the brand in the past. The company supply Everton, McLaren Formula One, Red Bull Racing, England Rugby and England Cricket. However, the partnership to produce Rangers kits is the standout collaboration for Behan, who branded the agreement as transformational. The reason for that is simple. According to him, Rangers are a truly global brand, with genuine backers around the world. Launched by pitching to personal trainers outside gyms, Castor has been labelled as a $1 billion sportswear empire and legitimate competitor to Adidas and Nike. Speaking on the Secret Leaders podcast, Behon named Rangers as the partnership that really made the difference for Castore and explained, "There are a lot of clubs think they have a global fan base. There are not many that do. Rangers Football Club was a transformational partnership, I would say. Globally recognised club and brand. Genuinely global fan base. People might watch the Premier League in Taiwan, Vietnam and Cambodia and Mexico, but they tend to support quite a small handful of teams. Rangers is one that people know all over the world. That was a big part of it." Report by David Evan. Evening Times Sport, February 6. Rodgers hails Ida for his responsibility. Report by Josh McCafferty. Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers was delighted for Adam Ida after he scored another goal against Dundee last night. The Irish striker made it 4 in 3 games as the Scottish Premiership champions ran riot against Tony Docherty's side. Arne Engels, Ida, Dazen Maeda and Nicholas Kuhn all scored in the 6-0 victory as Rodgers' men moved 13 points clear of City rivals Rangers at the top of the table. When Celtic lost Kyogo Furuhashi to French League One side Rennes last week, major concerns were raised among supporters, and while Rodgers openly wanted to sign another centre-forward, Ida has more than stepped up to the plate in recent matches. The Parkhead boss said, "He always was going to have to be patient. He is taking that responsibility now. With Kyogo going, he sees this as an opportunity. I'm so pleased for him. He's moving differently now, and he was a real handful." Ida is now up to 12 goals in all competitions for Celtic this season. The 23-year-old is in fine fettle and grasping his chance amid Furuhashi's mid-season departure. He will now turn his attention to Raith Rovers in the Scottish Cup on Saturday, as the holders aim to make it through to the quarter-finals. Report by Josh McCafferty. Evening Times Sport, February 6. Dundee United call for VAR reform. Report by Ewan Payton. Dundee United has launched a scathing assessment of the Scottish FA's KMI panel. The Premiership club has withdrawn its representation from the panel and has called for a robust process to help improve officiating and VAR standards in Scottish football. The KMI panel, as stated on the SFA website, delivers an assessment of key match incidents, KMIs, occurring in matches played in the Scottish Professional Football League, the League Cup, and Scottish Gas Scottish Cup, where VAR is operational. A lengthy club statement reads, "Dundee United has today formally notified the SFA of our decision to withdraw our representation from the KMI panel. This decision follows extensive discussions throughout the season with the Scottish FA refereeing department, where we raised concerns regarding the panel's purpose, effectiveness and impact on Scottish football. We believe the panel's outcomes have been inconsistent with feedback provided by the Scottish FA. There have been instances where on-field decisions, supported by VAR, and endorsed by the Scottish FA refereeing department were contradicted by the KMI panel. In many cases, these disagreements appear to be based on the opinions of panel members who, for the most part, lack significant expertise in the laws of the game. Subsequent outcomes have been magnified by external media misrepresentations, placing undue pressure on our match officials and potentially influencing decisions in future matches. We believe changes should be made to the KMI panel, or an alternative, more robust process should be used for reviewing refereeing decisions if deemed at our requirement. Additionally, we have expressed our concerns to the Scottish FA regarding the inconsistent interpretations of the laws of the game arising from VAR. This inconsistency has, at various times, caused other William Hill Premiership clubs to express their frustrations at the use of VAR, and while we are fully aware of our desire to ensure Dundee United at all times are given fair representation, we also wish to improve the overall game in Scottish football and encourage all parties to collaborate on making improvements. We further acknowledge that decisions will sometimes go against us. That is an inherent part of football. We also accept that referees, like everyone else, will make mistakes, and we respect the authority of match officials to make decisions, even when they may be contentious. However, as a club, we believe that the introduction of VAR has highlighted inconsistency in decision-making. As a result, scrutiny has been enhanced, and refereeing decisions have become a more prominent public issue. Dundee United will always prioritise the interests of our club, but we would also be reaching out to the Scottish FA and the SPFL, encouraging all Premiership clubs to come together. We are seeking ways to support our officials and improve both the VAR protocol and any subsequent review panel, with a view to enhancing Scottish football for the benefit of its member clubs. In the club's press release, United included a photo of Kilmarnock's goal scored by Marley Watkins in the weekend defeat at Robbie Park. Jim Goodwin felt a foul had been committed by the striker on his goalkeeper Jack Walton. Derek McInnes and other Scottish football commentators have since suggested that Walton failed to command his box, thus allowing Watkins the chance to compete to nod home. Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, February 6. McCoist not surprised if Gerrard were to return to Rangers. Report by David Irvin. Ali McCoist has revealed he would not be surprised to see Steven Gerrard back at Rangers. McCoist has suggested Gerrard could return to his former club after leaving Al Ettifaq. However, McCoist insists it is accepted Philippe Clement has the backing of the board, so a return for Gerrard would not be in the near future. Gerrard, who left Rangers for Aston Villa in 2021, lifted the Scottish Premiership title in the 2021 season. McCoist reckons Gerrard still has a high stock in Glasgow after the title triumph, but accepts the next job the coach takes will be crucial after his Saudi exit. Gerrard joined Al Ettifaq in 2023 after being dismissed by Aston Villa. He left his post as manager last month. McCoy's told sports betting site TalkSport BET, "It would not surprise me if Gerrard came back to Ibrox. He is obviously held in really high regard by the supporters because of the league title he won, and his next job is going to be vitally important for him. Things have not gone according to plan for him after he left Rangers. A little bit like Frank Lampard going to Coventry. His next appointment is really important to him as well. So we'll see where Stephen ends up choosing to go to with his career. I think at this moment, however, the majority of Rangers fans have accepted that Philippe Clement has been given the backing of the board. In fairness to him, there has been a steady improvement in performances and results. They did really well to finish in the top 8 of the Europa League table, particularly given the strength of some of the teams that they played. Having said that, some of the performances away from home have been completely unacceptable. They have been really poor in some games. Meanwhile, Rangers could have the best scouting situation and one of the best global networks in world football. That is the view of the former Ibrox defender Craig Moore, who is now an agent. He reckons Rangers have all the tools to become a scouting superpower, but action must be taken. For Moore, it is crazy that more has not been done to keep ties with former players and maintain relationships which could prove pivotal in signing from untapped markets. The agent reckons chopping and changing at Rangers has prevented any strong relationships being maintained with former players who could help in global recruitment drives. Said Moore, "I just look at the people that have come and gone from Rangers, and I always think that it should have been one of the best scouting infrastructures in the world because of the players from all over the globe that we have had. But it is important to maintain relationships. Down the years, Rangers have had a huge Italian contingent, South Americans. You've got Claudia Caniggia, Seb Rosenthal. You've had all the Dutch lads. In my role now, I cover Australia and Asia. There's a network of players that have got a strong relationship with the club, but I just think with all the chopping and changing, that has not been a focus for the club. There are a lot of people at the club that will not even know that those players actually played for Rangers. That passing of the baton in terms of the network, I think it's really important. I understand that everyone comes with their own network, but there's a lot of people that have come before them that know what it means to represent Rangers in a winning period. Sometimes what I think is a wonderful idea is not shared by others. I just think that there are a lot of opportunities to explore in different areas. Evening Times Sport, February 6. Celtic cannot repeat recruitment bungle. Report by Graham McGarry. I saw a rather amusing tweet yesterday that proposed a new twist on that reality TV show where a rich person and a poor person swap places for a week. Instead, it would be a Celtic fan swapping places with a fan of a Diddy club for the last week of the transfer window to see if they could hack it without their head spinning off. That's not to say, though, that having seen such riches, Celtic fans should live with being poor. Or put simply, having had a striker of the calibre of Kyogo Furuhashi, that they are not right to expect, or even demand, a replacement of similar standing. The transfer window rather rumbles into view at Celtic each season, like that one guy everyone knows who would start a rammy in an empty house. On the surface, there is no reason for a stooshy. Everything seems calm. Then, before you know it, people are tearing strips off one another. As the January edition closed on Monday night, Celtic sat 10 points clear at the top of the league with a game in hand, had the League Cup tucked into the trophy cabinet, a Champions League playoff phase tie against Bayern Munich to look forward to, having successfully negotiated the league phase of the competition, and more money than God. All this is still true. Well, apart from the fact that they won their game in hand 6-0 and are now 13 points clear. But it is that last point that is the pertinent one in the context of the window, because they are also absolutely minted, but minus one top-class striker. Kyogo's departure had been in the work for months. Manager Brendan Rodgers publicly and repeatedly stated that they had to bring in a replacement. He seemed relaxed that the club would deliver, that plans were in place. He said it again as recently as Sunday evening. They simply had to sign a striker. Then they did not. It left one unsure of what to expect when rolling up to Rodgers' press conference on Tuesday. In days of old, during his first spell in charge of the club, this may have been just cause for open civil warfare. The manager had seemingly been left spinning in the wind by his board, and the sights would likely be trained on them as a result. Maybe through time or experience, or a recognition that his position was not as strong second time around, Rodgers has consistently struck an altogether more magnanimous tone since returning to Glasgow, on a range of issues. But on this one, with the stellar body of work behind him on the pitch since his return, and his position significantly strengthened as a result, not to mention the restoration of his place in the affections of the Celtic supporters, he surely was not going to let this one lie, was he? Certainly from the fans' point of view, if not from that of Rodgers. The optics of it all are that the board have effectively waved the white flag ahead of the Bayern Munich tie, and that they are happy enough to settle for being ahead of Rangers domestically. Going into the first leg of that mammoth task against the Germans, with Ida as the only recognised senior striker, leaves open the very real possibility that Johnny Kenny, no disrespect, may well be going up against the likes of Diot Upamecano and Kim Min-jae for a good portion of it. Given the disparity in finances, Celtic may well have been taking a knife to a gunfight, even if they did manage to bring in another striker. But now, they are running the risk of taking a water pistol in that striking position. Rodgers, though, struck a diplomatic tone. Was there irritation under the polished veneer? You can bet your last pound on it. But he seems to have waved something of a white flag of his own, realising there is little to be gained by airing his grievances and the club's dirty linen in public. On the surface, everything was business as usual, and the club were all pulling in the one direction. In a way, it is a perfectly reasonable stance to take. Rodgers does not want to do anything to risk upsetting an apple cart that is bobbling along quite nicely at the moment. But if the fiery vernacular and pointed language towards the board is absent, it leaves you wondering just how Rodgers may eventually express his dissatisfaction. Many fans have already surmised that it may be by taking his leave once more, though this time at the end of his contract next summer. Playing devil's advocate for the board, which is normally just a saying but one which many Celtic fans may take as literal in this case. It's not like the men upstairs are simply using that cash pile to practice their cannonballs into, or are making snow angels atop it a la Scrooge McDuck. They have indeed sanctioned a fair bit of spending in recent times. In fact, they broke their transfer record twice in the space of a fortnight just last summer, bringing in Adam Ida and Aaron Engels. As was mentioned this week on a podcast run by a sports writer once of this parish, it is something of an open secret that those two players being on the bench as Celtic went down 3-0 at Ibrox in January raised an eyebrow or two in the posh seats that day. Who is to say if the fact that neither Ida nor Engels have become nailed-on starters since their big-money arrivals has made the Celtic board less than keen to sanction another splurge on a forward. But as was once remarked when St Mirren legend Mark Yardley rose for a header, it's hardly the biggest leap. What seems more likely in this case, though, and what would also explain Rodgers' reticence to criticise, is that this was a failure of forward planning on the part of the recruitment department, rather than a reluctance to spend money. Whatever the reason, their recruitment is an area that Celtic need to sort out once again, and pronto. They will have a Champions League qualifier in the summer to contend with, and remarkably, they risk going into it half-baked, as they have done so many times in the past. Rodgers said on Tuesday that he will not allow his irritations to kill his joy of managing Celtic this time around. But to borrow another phrase of his, if the club are as similarly underprepared for the summer, it seems a matter of time before it will be terminado, says Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, February 6. Jota reacts to fantastic Celtic Park return. Report by Josh McCafferty. Jota was delighted to make his second Celtic Park debut as Celtic cruised to a dominant 6-0 win over Dundee. Aaron Engels and Dazen Maida each bagged braces, as Adam Ida and Nicholas Kuhn both made their respective contributions to the triumph with a goal apiece. Although the usually flamboyant Portuguese wide man did not score, he more than made his contributions to the thrashing, floating a fine cross into the back post for Maida to net his first of the match. Jota continually opened his box of tricks, particularly in the first half, remaining continually impressive. Post-match, the winger reflected on how satisfying it felt to be back playing in front of the Celtic Park crowd, and he told Celtic TV, "It was fantastic. It was a feeling I was looking for a long time." The attacker who moved back to Glasgow's East End from Rennes last week netted against Motherwell on Sunday. Emotional after he scored, Maida set the 25-year-old up, and last night Jota was more than happy to return the favour. "I wanted to do the same for him. Credit to him, because he has been outstanding this season. This is something that we work on throughout the week. Me being here in the past, I know my teammates well, I know the movements that Dazen is going to make. It's just a question of being in the right places at the right moments. Maida is known for being hugely effective on the pitch, but off it he remains tight-lipped. Asked about his own personal performance, the Japanese forward was as humble as ever and said, "I am happy to score a goal and win. I'll do my best in the next game." The untimely loss of Kyogo and subsequent failure to replace him was a major frustration for the Parkhead faithful when the transfer window slammed shut on Monday night. But just a few days on, such irritations seem like a distant memory. Now 13 points clear of Rangers at the top of the Scottish Premiership, you would be a fool to bet against Celtic winning the title at this stage. Brendan Rodgers' men have been in fine fettle almost all season and came up with their biggest home victory of the current campaign against Tony Docherty's side, who have now lost back-to-back games by 6-0. The games keep on coming for Celtic, with Raith Rovers next up in the Scottish Cup 5th round on Saturday. Report by Josh McCafferty. Evening Times Sport, February 17. Celtic will need best ever performance to overcome Bayern. Report by Graham McGarry. If Celtic have been keen to frame their Champions League campaign as an extended learning exercise, then they now face a heck of a final examination. Though they will hope, of course, that their trip to face Bayern Munich does not in fact mark the end of their journey in the competition. Dazen Maida's late goal at Celtic Park last week to keep the Scottish champions within touching distance of their star-studded opponents gives them that sliver of hope, and was a just reward for a more than creditable performance over the piece, and a particularly impressive closing to the game, as Brendan Rodgers' men found a way to get up the pitch and rattle the previously unflappable Germans, at least a little. Celtic captain Callum McGregor knows that there are not many people outside of his own dressing room who give his side an earthly to overcome that deficit, and that it will take a monumental performance for them to do so. Better, perhaps, than any other across his previous 504 appearances for the club? Yes, I think so, McGregor said. I think we have to max out in terms of performance level, and there's no reason why we cannot. Having seen what we've seen in the first game, yes, we need a bit of luck, and we need to be really good on the night, but we just go and we leave nothing on the pitch and see where we go from there. It would be brilliant, obviously, to qualify, and that's the aim now. The next 2 days we recover and we have full focus and full energy going into that game. I want us to come off with no regrets and see where we can get to. McGregor said last week that he felt Celtic probably had to win the first leg in Glasgow against Bayern to have any hope of upsetting the odds over the tie, but he was encouraged by what he saw in that last quarter of the match at Celtic Park. So much so that he has revised that opinion and said, "We're still right in the game. Obviously, when you get to these games, everybody's got to believe that you can win the game." And even the way the game played out, there were very small margins in terms of the game, and on another night, with a different referee, who knows? So the number one aspect was that the performance was there. We're still in the game, and I think if one of the big teams loses 2-1 away from home, then everybody still thinks they've won the tie. So I don't see any reason why we shouldn't feel that way. And especially the last 25 minutes, That gives us a good template for the game. If we can change the momentum of the game and have a wee bit more of the ball and make them defend, then you see that we could be good in the game. So that has to be the mindset for the players now, to recover. And then when we arrive into Tuesday night, we give it absolutely everything we've got, and we leave nothing on the pitch and see where we go. Part of the learning curve for Celtic this season in Europe has been a realisation that they sometimes have to, in McGregor's words, take their medicine, a reminder of which was dished out in brutal fashion by Borussia Dortmund when they last travelled to Germany. The goalless draw that followed in Bergamo against Atalanta, and the disciplined display on the whole against Bayern, save for the defensive lapse to allow Harry Kane to score his side's second on the night, showed that there are more strings to Celtic's bow than the all-out attack that is the hallmark of their domestic approach. For McGregor, that ability to stay in shape and to suffer has been a key to the success they have had since that bruising night at the Signal Iduna Park, and will inform their approach to the game at the Allianz Arena. I think against the really top teams with big quality and speed as well, sometimes you cannot press every single pass, because if you do, you just open up and give yourself too much work, and the players have too much quality and too much speed at the top end of the pitch, he said. You give them half a yard and you're in trouble. So sometimes you have to sacrifice an area of the pitch where it's okay, you can have the ball there, you're not going to score from there. And then you work your way across the pitch and try and press and lock half the pitch off and try and press in an area where you actually have the advantage. So I think the Dortmund game was an eye-opener in terms of if you have a poorer performance and the team that you're playing against max out with that quality, you can get hit for 7 and nobody wants that. So you have to take your medicine a little bit when you play at this level, and you need to give yourself the advantage of pressing in certain areas of the pitch, and that's where we've been really good. And even in the games where we've gone down, we've managed to fight our way back into the game as well. So there seems to be a good maturity about the group, led by really good tactical input from the manager and the coaches as well. Guys like John Kennedy, they understand the game. And that's what's great about working at this level. Everybody's super tuned in and trying to learn and understand the highest level of European football. So it's good. I think the big thing is that we don't concede early and sort of lose the tie from that. So the players understand where the game is, where it balances, and how good we need to be to progress. It's a big ask, but you know, if anyone can do it, then this group of players can. Report by Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, February 17. Scotland women receive injury blow. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Scotland will be without key midfielder Erin Cuthbert for their upcoming UEFA Women's Nations League UWNL matches after the Chelsea star was forced to withdraw from the squad due to injury. The 26-year-old, who has been a pivotal figure in Scotland's midfield, will now focus on her recovery as the national team prepares for a crucial period in the UWNL campaign. A statement confirming her absence read, Erin Cuthbert has withdrawn from the Scotland squad for the upcoming matches through injury. See you back out there soon, Erin. Scotland, who are still without a permanent manager since Pedro Martinez Loza was sacked last December, will visit Austria on February 21 before hosting the Netherlands at Hampden Park 4 days later. Chelsea manager Sonia Bompastor revealed Cuthbert has been dealing with a rib issue in recent weeks, which sidelined her for Sunday's Women's Super League clash against Everton. She was a noticeable absentee as the Blues secured a nail-biting 2-1 win at Kingsmeadow, with goals from Mayra Ramirez and Lauren James cancelling out Kelly Gago's opener, extending their lead at the top of the WSL table to 7 points. Here is the latest Scotland squad in full. Goalkeepers Erin Clackers, Hibs, Eartha Cummings, FC Rosengard, Lee Gibson, Glasgow City. Defenders Jenna Clark, Liverpool, Leah Eddy, Rangers, Sophie Howard, Leicester City, Emma Lawton, Celtic, Rachel McLaughlin, Brighton and Hove Albion, Amy Muir, Glasgow City, Kirsty Smith, West Ham United. Midfielders Chelsea Cornet, Rangers, Freya Gregory, Newcastle United, Sam Kerr, Liverpool, Kirsty McLean, Rangers, Ailey Shore, Hearts, Caroline Weir, Real Madrid. Forwards Ailey Adams, Hibs, Lauren Davidson, SK Brann, Claire Emsley, Angel City, Kirsty Hanson, Aston Villa, Mia Macaulay, Rangers, Martha Thomas, Tottenham Hotspur, Emma Watson, Everton. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, February 17. Ian Cathro at centre of racism storm after accusing rival player. Report by Mark Walker. Ian Cathro is at the centre of a racism storm in Portugal after accusing a Nacional player during a match against his Estoril side. The former Hearts boss was named Manager of the Month in Portugal after 5 wins in a row, and they continued their unbeaten run with a 2-2 draw at Nacional. But the Scot was outraged at what he alleged was racist abuse from an unnamed home player against one of his own. However, Nacional has hit back in the strongest possible terms and demanded former Spurs, Wolves and Newcastle coach Cathro retract his allegations. Cathro said after the game, "Before talking about the match, it is very important to say in a serious way that there was a moment of racism against one of our players in the first half. It is something that obviously I feel a responsibility to say. We cannot hide in these moments. Obviously there has to be some process or protocol because we all have the responsibility to not have athletes living like this." External later confirmed the complaint on their website and urged action, but that provoked a strong denial from Nacional, who stated, "Following the serious statements made by coach Ian Cathro after the game, and the statement published today by Estoril on its official website, we express our surprise and, at the same time, its repudiation of these statements that call into question our good name and the values of our century-old institution. Given that the alleged situation occurred during the first half of the match, we find it strange that at the time in question, during the half-time break and throughout the second half, it was not reported by any member of Estoril, either formally or informally. We find it even more strange that the alleged racist acts were not witnessed by anyone such as the refereeing team, the delegates of La Liga Portugal, our staff, or the security forces at the stadium. Nacional is proud that, throughout its more than 114 years of history, it has always been associated with the fight against any and all types of racial intolerance or social discrimination, and since its foundation it has been an inclusive institution that highlights the importance of respecting race, ethnicity, or religion of each human being. So we will not allow any coach to give false testimonies that harm the good name of Nacional. Report by Mark Walker. Evening Times Sport, February 17. Rangers hope for fitness boost. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Philippe Clement will be keen to have more options at his disposal as he desperately seeks a strong end to Rangers' season. Danilo, Connor Barron and Dujon Sterling all missed the 3-1 Scottish Premiership victory over Hearts yesterday, but the Rangers manager has confirmed the trio are nearing a return to full fitness. The Belgians shared that while these players are close to training with the team, their physical readiness will determine when they can rejoin the matchday squad over the coming weeks. Clement also highlighted the impressive form of Clinton Nisiala, who is quickly proving to be a valuable summer season signing from AC Milan, showing consistent development since stepping into the first team. Addressing the prospect of having key performers fit again, Clement said, "It's a difficult one. Towards training, but towards a game it is going to be more difficult. I hope to recover 1 or 2 bodies more in the training. I think Danilo will start to be in training with contact now. Connor Barron is close towards training. Dujon Sterling is also close to training, but then we need to see what their physical level is." Clement would then go on to highlight the role of 21-year-old Nisiala, who had to remain patient for his opportunity, yet has not looked back since making his Rangers debut on January 9. Explained the Rangers boss, "I need to praise him, and I don't do that so often or fast with young players. He is showing consistency from the moment he stepped into the team. You see him developing week after week. He is so focused on getting better. He's so hungry to become better, and those are the kind of young players you are looking for as they develop fast. It's not the question to keep this focus, concentration and hard work. Then he will be a really good signing at the end of the season." Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, February 17. Susan Egglestaff says, "Boycotts aren't always the answer, but it's what England should do." The Afghani cricket scene has never, funnily enough, been my specialist subject. But over the past few weeks, the curious case of cricket in Afghanistan has never been talked about more. Later this month, the England men's cricket team will play Afghanistan in a Champions Trophy match in Lahore. Rarely, if ever, has a single cricket match been shrouded in such controversy. The calls for a boycott by England are deafening and are coming from all angles. The reason for such intense feelings about England's men lining up against Afghanistan is centred around the Afghan women's team, or rather the lack of one. Following the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan in 2021, women's sport has been effectively outlawed. Pre-2021, this was a country in which females were gradually gaining more rights, and women and girls playing sport was becoming a far more commonplace occurrence. The women's national cricket team was formed in 2010 and was making steady progress. But in 2021, when the Taliban returned to power, this progress immediately stopped. Indeed, the lack of access to sport was one of many issues. Such is the Taliban's treatment of women. Many, including the members of the women's cricket team, fled in an attempt to find safety. But the situation for women in Afghanistan remains dire. Their rights are almost non-existent, and they are permitted to do very little unless accompanied by a man. This is clearly an abhorrent situation, but it's been like this for nearly 4 years. This current spike in headlines is interesting. It is because of England's upcoming match against Afghanistan on the 26th of February. While Afghanistan women's cricket team has been decimated, the men's team continues not only to play but to thrive, with the men's outing at this month's Champions Trophy 2025 just their latest international appearance in what's been a relatively lengthy list in recent years. Despite the women's team's existence having been effectively ended by the Taliban, the men's team has continuously entirely unhindered, receiving support both from the Taliban, who see the men's cricket team as an effective way to promote the country, and from the sport's governing body, the International Cricket Council, the ICC. It is the continued support from the ICC that's so incongruous and baffling. The ICC's regulations state that full membership of the organisation is dependent upon each nation having a women's cricket team, as well as pathway structures in place. However, despite this clearly not being the case in Afghanistan, their men's team have been allowed to participate in ICC tournaments without any apparent sanctions, with their participation in this month's Champions Trophy just the latest case in point. And this is why the calls for England to boycott this match have become so loud they're now almost deafening. There's a few things to consider here. Firstly, this decision should not actually have fallen to the England men's team, nor the England and Wales Cricket Board. The ICC should have taken action on the Afghanistan men's team already, given the country is clearly not adhering to the conditions of ICC membership. But given the ICC has, so far at least, shown complete cowardice and refused to take a stance, the next best thing is for opposing teams to make their voices heard. The second thing is to consider is the idea of boycotts at all. There are few, and I include myself in this, who believe boycotts are an ideal solution to anything in sport. Rarely, if ever, has a team, organisation or individual staging a boycott changed much in the grand scheme of things, if anything. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and there's no other way to describe the plight of Afghani women, and within that the Afghanistan women's cricket team, as anything other than desperate. Yes, there was a glimmer of good news in the past few weeks, with the Afghanistan women's team, many of whom settled in Australia after fleeing their home country, playing their first match since the Taliban took over, when they took on a Cricket Without Borders team in Melbourne. But this far from solved any problems. Few are suggesting a cricketing boycott would change much materially for Afghani women, whose lives have become significantly more restricted since the Taliban returned to power in the country. But this is surely no justification to do nothing. To allow the Afghanistan men's team to continue playing as they currently are, with no pushback at all, sends a clear message that while it's easy to talk about how terrible the Taliban's treatment of women is, actually taking any action is just a step too far. The repeated calls for a boycott, which have come from the political sphere as well as the sporting sphere, a cross-party letter signed by nearly 200 UK politicians was recently sent to the England and Wales Cricket Board, calling for England to refuse to play the match, have fallen on deaf ears, with confirmation coming last week that England will indeed take to the field against the Afghanistan men's team. Those, including Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy, who have suggested a boycott is depriving sports fans of the chance to watch the sport they love, may well be correct. But there's times when things are bigger than a sporting fixture. This is surely a case in point. By continuing to allow Afghanistan men's team to continue as they are, without any pushback at all, is a slap in the face of the most almighty proportions to all Afghani women whose lives have been decimated by the Taliban. Boycotts really change the world, but in particular cases such as this, that's no reason at all not to stage them, says Susan Egglestaff.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, @Q and Review, and to tell your friends about our service